Greetings, friends. As usual at this time, the project Polemos in English language. And today we will have another guest, very interesting guest for my surprise. He came, just recently, James Lynch. He is from Ireland. He came to Ukraine and he decided to stay and to help Ukraine. I think that it will be good to say that you are a medical correspondent and reporter, but at the same time you have a huge experience as an entrepreneur and in the national healthcare medical system of Ireland. So, James, first, welcome to Ukraine.
Thank you.
It's a brave decision to come here today, and tell about the main reason why you decided to come here, what motivated you, and what you're going to do next.
Okay, so the main reason I came to Ukraine, I left Ireland on June the 6th, which was my daughter's birthday. She was 19 on the 6th of June, and I was heading to Prague for a blockchain conference on the 19th, the 20th and the 21st of June. And I arrived to Prague about 5 or 6 days early, and I looked at the map and I decided I could make Ukraine. It was about 5 hours drive, so I drove to the Ukraine. I have a tent on my car, so I travel with a tent on my car, so I have accommodation. I arrived in the Ukraine with no real desire to stay or to, I arrived as a tourist, in effect. And I stayed my first night in Lviv, and I parked beside a bombed out building. And that night, my first night in Ukraine, was an experience. There was no sleep. Like, the air raid siren was going off probably for 3 or 4 hours. It was an absolute nightmare not for me, but obviously for the residents. And I was thinking, my God, how can people live through something like this, being constantly targeted and bombed indiscriminately? So the next morning I got up and I decided I'll drive to Kyiv and have a look and see what Kyiv was like. I arrived in Kyiv on the 16th of June. I stayed in a hotel, and that was the night. It was a terrible night in Kyiv. There was 4 hours of continuous bombs from Russia. And the next morning I decided, the Ukrainians are being treated very badly, and there's a lack of information, a distinct lack of information coming out to English-speaking people. Mm-hmm. And it was when I was driving to Kyiv, one of the podcasts I was listening to was from the Daily Telegraph. It's on Spotify, and they update on the Ukraine every day. It's actually a very good podcast. And he actually said they are based in Poland. They're not based in the Ukraine. So according to the Daily Telegraph, there's a distinct lack of people, English-speaking people, on the ground reporting direct from Ukraine. What they're getting in the Daily Telegraph, which is a big UK newspaper, they're getting second-hand information in Poland and then passing it on. And I thought, with my experience and background, that's I could certainly report from Kyiv and stay a safe distance. I mean, I'm obviously interested in my safety. I have children, I want to go back home, but I want to help as well in some capacity. I have a few months that I can help, and I'm upskilling to do whatever I can to help the Ukrainian cause. That's it, really.
Okay, that sounds very, pleasant for those Ukrainians who are here for 3 years observing the war. So from the one side, I want to say thank you so much for coming. From the other side, I want to say that it's a bit brave and at the same time maybe mad decision, because we have a lot of men in Ukraine who don't want to go to the army, and now you are coming here from the Ireland and you want to help, and we are not talking what you're gonna do next, but we are talking that you can help Ukrainians in terms of medical sphere, medicine, as a correspondent, reporter, and in this sphere you can help. And what are the main challenges for you? What you are afraid to observe here in Ukraine, if you are?
the main challenge I have faced is the language.
Oh.
Absolutely, without a doubt. But the culture of Ukraine is practically identical to the culture in Europe. So the way you live, go about your day, is the same as it is in Ireland. You know, so it's a very easy transition coming from Ireland to the Ukraine, except for the language, which is very difficult for someone from Ireland. You know, I've had no exposure to the Ukrainian language before this. I know maybe 3 or 4 words of Ukrainian. That's it. I'm doing my best to learn, but I can't understand the alphabet. So.
And what are the 3 words?
До
побачення.
And what's the one in the morning? Good morning or good day.
Добрий ранок.
Добрий день.
Добрий день.
Добрий день.
Добрий день.
And
Okay.
privet.
Okay, that's not bad for the beginning. Like, I mean,
I have another couple of 1,000 words to go. I'll get there.
okay. I want to understand. Like, I mean, at this moment, you are presenting a new project here in Ukraine, because you said important things when you were talking just now. Is that people in Europe, Europeans, they lack qualitative and good information in English about Ukraine, and a lot of them, they don't understand what is going on. We see that propaganda is massively influencing people's brains, and unfortunately, Russian propaganda is really powerful still in Europe.
Oh, hugely.
So, can we say that now we see that some kind of, like, you know, ordinary people, they have more influence now because they are coming here to Ukraine, and you are not the only one who are here now. And unfortunately, broad media, because of this Russian huge investing in propaganda, they lost this fight for Ukraine in Europe, in media. No. Can we say about that or no?
The Russian propaganda is very insidious. How they go about it. They use X to disseminate misinformation about the war and about the Ukraine. And the majority of people in the West don't understand that it's misinformation. And they read it and believe, but it's actually Russian propaganda, as I've now come to be aware of. Before I arrived to the Ukraine, I knew very little about the war, admittedly. I knew there was a war, I knew Russia invaded, but I didn't know the details of it, because we were never told. And a lot of the details that were on X was misinformation. So, like, it's a big battle. It really is. The Russian apparatus they're experts at this, you know, dealing with, you know, muddying the water. That's what they do. Muddy the water. It's a kind of a phrase we use in Ireland.
Like, I mean, they are telling the false narratives.
All the time.
And people believe in that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Even Europeans who understand who is Russia. Even Europeans.
Yes, everybody. But you see, people are very busy. So people in the West, they're going about their lives. They might watch the news for 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, they might have been given 2 pieces of misinformation. They don't go and check. You know, they're not on their computer going, hold on. So they believe it, you know. How are they to know? So I've come here and I think, you know what, we could do something about that, you know, especially in the English language. We can tackle this. And the fact that the Daily Telegraph have said that there is a distinct lack of people on the ground here, there is an opportunity, I think, for direct reporting from Ukraine, you know, to circumvent any misinformation or propaganda that's also out there. So that's a project that I'm looking at the moment.
Basically, the name of your project, if I understood you correctly, is like Live from Ukraine.
Yes.
But for foreigners, like for those, for Europeans, or maybe who will be the audience? Britain,
like English, like the United Kingdom and Ireland. But Britain, United Kingdom mainly, is the audience. So the plan is that we have access to a radio station, and where we hope to do live news or live broadcasts from, we'll say, a safe distance from wherever the fighting is, and we can post on Telegram and X and on the radio station and interview people who are affected, either people who are fighting or people who live in the area, or people who want to be have their voice heard. We'll give them an hearing.
Yeah, but I mean, I have two questions in terms like how you gonna translate it, first of all, because for that you need to do it like very quickly, because unfortunately the war is going on in that way that everything is changing every day. That's what we were talking before the interview.
I know.
Yeah, you that live one day because tomorrow may not happen. Who knows? And I mean, the first shock when Europeans come here, and sometimes I observe it in talking with my friends from Denmark or from some countries, they don't understand when I'm talking, oh, we had a siren. And they're like, what? Like, I mean, they understand that, yeah, they were bombing us, it's going on for so long time, we are tired, when it will stop, it will never stop. But they don't understand the level of, I don't know, or panic or something when you hear the siren. Do you understand this?
Yes, absolutely. It's shocking to hear it. Absolutely. To hear a air raid siren in 2025 in Europe is beyond belief, to be honest. This should have happened. This is like 100 years ago. This should be. To think that the Russians are bombing indiscriminately is absolutely incredible in 2025. When an air raid siren goes off, it sends a shiver down your spine, knowing that, I mean, it's unlikely hopefully you won't get injured, but they do bomb indiscriminately. They're not targeting military or, they're bombing apartments and things like that. It's absolutely outrageous, and this is what needs to be broadcast to the world. Putin has gone out and said he only bombs military targets. And it's obviously clear, since I've arrived in Kiev, that is a complete lie. There's no military targets being bombed. What's been bombed in Kiev is apartment buildings and hotels and hospitals and schools, and that people don't realise that in the UK, not to the extent of what is happening, because the Russians are very clever coming out. If somebody reports, they're all over that report, calling it misinformation, even though they're the ones who are doing the misinformation. It's pervasive in their approach, and it'll be very difficult to tackle it, but we have to start somewhere.
Can you tell about one specific topic which you mentioned also before the interview? Maybe I may wrong, you can correct me, that this type of hate or superiority from some nation to the other nation, which maybe you observed in your country, but many decades ago.
Yes, I absolutely did.
From, as you said, from the British, the citizens of Great Britain to Ireland. And we know this split, Northern Ireland and Ireland. They stayed Northern Ireland in the
United Kingdom.
Yes, in the United Kingdom.
But today, like, the relations between Ireland and England today are very good. Like, we're very good friends. But before, the similarity between Russia and Ukraine is practically identical. The way that the British Empire treated Ireland, they abolished our language. We weren't allowed. Like, they tried to get rid of our culture, in essence, and threw us off our land, took all the land off us, and a lot of Irish people emigrated. But I mean, we've forgiven them, more or less, and moved on. But the similarities in Ukraine, Russia have done the exact same, abolishing the Ukrainian language, trying to get rid of the Ukrainian culture, so the Russians can say, look, you don't have a culture. Our culture is your culture, just like the British did to Ireland. So there is a lot of similarities. There certainly is, but I think Ukraine are really up against it with Russia. they're a formidable foe, as the British were back when they had an empire. You know.
But how you overcome this, like I mean, in terms of the island, it just took time, a lot of time.
You don't give up. That's it. You keep fighting. Like in Ireland, it actually took 800 years. 800 years of revolutions and false starts and thousands upon thousands of deaths. But eventually we got there, you know. It takes time, and it probably takes generations. It might take 1 or 2 generations, but you will get there.
Okay. Young democracy.
Yes.
Currently now we are a young democracy,
yeah.
I think.
You are a very young democracy, which is great. You know, I mean, it's a step forward.
Okay, I think that it's important also to talk what you want to do next. What will be your next move in terms of here, like we are presenting your project. I hope it will work in English language, and you want somehow, I don't know, to get the audience, to get attention. So what is your next step? I mean, who you want to present it, like in Great Britain or something?
Well, I have somebody in the United Kingdom who will interview me when I'm ready. She's a television personality, and she's quite popular. So she will interview me when I'm maybe in 6 weeks' time, when I'm organised. And that will start to get her name out there, and we'll see what happens after that interview. She has millions of followers, this person, so surely something will come of it. And if not, I'll get interviewed by somebody else, and we'll keep, like, we're not going to give up. We'll keep plugging away.
Not give up, okay, not giving up.
Yeah.
You also mentioned some British media. I'm talking about the Telegraph.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are taking some articles from this, like magazine, to cover in our Ukrainian media, just for understanding how foreign media they represent Ukraine in media.
Yeah.
And mostly Telegraph is doing this in a good, balanced way,
Yes.
like in a proper way.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yes. The Telegraph is reporting very accurately.
Yes, but we know at the same time a lot of media which are not very correctly represented. Or how for you as a journalist, because you also have like medical correspondent experience, how is it for you? You need to show to be correct and to be ambivalent several sides, not only one side, but you need to show several characters or several people opinions, because sometimes they can be they don't have in common something. One person can say one thing, another different, and everyone is thinking differently. So for you, the real journalism is about showing one point or several minds point of view. How do you think?
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting question.
Because if you go on the east, I'm sorry to interrupt, you will see different people.
Yes.
And you need to understand that.
And people have a different narrative, you know. Yeah. That's a good question. How do I approach that?
Are you ready to meet new people with different mindset in Ukraine?
I've met lots of people with lots of different mindsets over the last 50 years. Yeah, I'll be ready for that. And look, if that's their view and they believe it, well, then they're entitled to it, you know?
Okay.
And that's my belief. I wouldn't railroad anybody into anything. You know, if that's what you believe, you know, and you're not saying it for propaganda purposes, you know, but then you're entitled to your opinion, because that's a democracy. So whatever they say to me, I'll be ready for it.
Democracy is pluralism. Several opinions.
Yeah. Well, it's everybody's opinion. You know, we all have an opinion, and we have to listen to people's opinion, whether you like it or not. You know, you just have to listen to it. Okay. You don't have to act on it, but you have to listen.
Even if it's pro-Russian.
Well, sure. Look, I mean, of course, there's going to be some opinions are going to be pro-Russian. You know. Okay. I presume they are. I mean, I haven't gone there yet, but I presume.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert.
Okay. We are doing this interview, for the purpose to show to people that there are a lot of amazing people who came here to Ukraine to talk about Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I just want you to say something to those who are watching us, maybe to support the idea of your project, to make there something trigger to them. I don't know, what will they trigger in your project? Can you say to people, to the audience, why they need your project in English language about Ukraine?
Well, we are supporting Ukraine. We support a positive narrative without an attack disinformation. And we'll also support independent artists and musicians and people, self-employed people who are doing their best under very difficult circumstances. If we can connect them with people in the United Kingdom to expand their connections and expand trade routes or whatever, we will do our level best to help at every level, and that's if whatever we can do, we will do. That is and we will use the English speaking as a mouthpiece for the Ukrainian people. They will have an opinion and we will hear it.
Why Ukrainian war is more important than the conflict between Israel and Palestine for a broad audience, or the recent conflict with Iran and Israel? Why it's more important to know?
Is that more important? That's more important to the Americans. Israel and Iran is, it is key, obviously. And that's where America is tied up with backing Israel. And in fairness, Ukraine has the European Union beside it. There's a lot of very large countries in Europe who are helping, in fair, like the Germans and the French and the British. They are helping as much as they can. The Ukrainians have a lot of support. The Americans are supporting with words, maybe, at the moment, and I think that will change. That is going to change. As you saw an interview with President Trump the other day with that Ukrainian journalist, he was very empathetic towards her, and he hinted at there was Patriot missiles on the way. That interview he did, I don't know can you believe him? Can you believe anything he says? I don't know. He means well, which is good, which is better than he maybe 2 months ago, his rhetoric. It is certainly getting better. Ukraine has an awful lot of support, globally. It's a pity that Israel and Iran has distracted from it, but there's a lot of flashpoints around the world. Ukraine, Israel, and obviously Taiwan, it could be a major issue. Korea, it's not looking good, really. We need peace.
That's very important.
Yeah, we need peace and logical, people.
Yeah, but unfortunately, as you already said it, the rest of the world, it's the last narrative everyone is talking about, that it's slowly moving to more and more conflicts, and unfortunately it's moving maybe to the Third World War, so we don't know. We hope for the peace, but in reality we don't know.
Yeah.
And also another question about, you mentioned the United States. Why do you think, we see that you said the rhetoric of Mr. Trump is much better towards Ukraine recently, although we can't totally believe him or something like that, as you already said it. So the question is that, do Europeans, they need to rely only on themselves in terms of helping Ukraine?
Yes.
And why they're in this case so slow? Maybe they can help more in terms of military, because we can get it from the United States. Yeah,
I think the Europeans are afraid at some level to assist Ukraine. Because every time, at the moment, they're talking about those Taurus missiles from Germany, and Putin has said, we know the Germans are operating them. And if we see a Taurus or Taurus missile, we know it's a German missile. And that has put the frighteners on everybody. The Germans don't want Berlin bombed, And would Putin do it? Nothing would surprise me. I think that man is a lunatic.
Okay, then we have the situation. Then the Europe is afraid of Putin and Trump, who is playing with him. So who we need to rely on themselves? Like why?
Who do you rely on? You rely on yourselves. You know, ye know best. Like, you have allies, but the other allies in Europe are very aware. They have their own populations as well, and they don't want to drag their entire populations into a war, you know, and put their citizens as targets. Like, Putin is, you know, don't underestimate him. If he, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he did launch an attack on the Baltic states or Poland. It just wouldn't surprise me. The man could do anything.
I think he's bluffing. He's just blackmailing.
I don't know. What a mistake if he wasn't bluffing. Oh, it would be an absolute catastrophe. You know, you take him at what he says. If he says he's going to do this, you know.
No, I mean, for my humble opinion, because I don't want to go further. I'm a journalist, I need to stay balanced and correct. But in terms of like my humble opinion, he will not go further. He just tries, would be we're afraid, and unfortunately he's winning in terms that really Europeans are afraid to make him angry. But he will not do this because his main point and the aim is not the whole world, just Ukraine. He's obsessed by Ukraine and post-Soviet countries because it's the same mentality, nation, which he already made a lot of essays and wrote about that. That's all. Because if he'll move further, they will respond. In that case, NATO will respond, and he will not do this because then the NATO will respond to him. I think.
I hope you're right. I really do. But what's happening on the ground is different. You know, they're putting mines now, landmines, in the Baltics. Like, that's just insane. In 2025, they're mining their own land to stop a Russian invasion. They are convinced of what you've said. They think the opposite. So, you know, there's two narratives out there, and I think prepare for the worst. Why wouldn't you?
Prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what Europe are doing, like especially the Baltic states, Finland and Sweden and Poland.
Finland is very interesting because they suffered from the Soviet Union. They already know it.
Like, it's so complicated. The whole thing is so complicated.
Okay. I think that we will finish not on a very positive note.
The future, I'll finish. Let me say one thing about Ukraine. I was in Prague 30 years ago, about 2 months after the Berlin Wall came down. A friend of mine lived in Germany. We drove over to Prague. We went to Pilsen and Prague. And what I saw in Prague 30 years ago is similar to Ukraine, Kiev. A country ready. Everything is ready for your economy to explode. It really is. All the pieces are in place. Just like in Prague 30 years ago. And Prague, that is some facelift. I was there 30 years ago and I was there a month ago. And it's like, I don't recognise the city. None of it. It has gotten a complete makeover. Everything, even the trams. It's like a miracle. And I can see something like that here. Ukraine are very educated. There's in the cities, a lot of people do speak English. You know, and the weather is beautiful. It's 25 degrees outside. It's a beautiful day. You know, the tourism industry here is going to be absolutely enormous once the war ends. The future is very bright. There's no doubt about it. It's just a pity the Russians are behaving so diabolically. You know? But there is, I mean, to end on a positive, Ukraine is a beautiful country, and it will, please God, after the war, the citizens, everyone in Ukraine will benefit. A rising tide lifts everybody. And it will come. Investment will come, and tourism, and people will follow.
After we will win.
After you win, yeah. So one step at a time. So I wouldn't be like it is, especially living in Kiev, it is very stressful. when you hear those air raid sirens, you know, to think you probably cannot see, God, this is never going to end. You can't see it finishing, but it will finish. At some point it has to finish. It can't go on forever, so it will finish. And when it does finish, there will be a huge boom here, you know, which will be, and the Ukrainians deserve it. You know, you deserve a little bit of positivity after the last couple of years. You can enjoy it again, but like I do, I see the future as very bright. I really do, and it's one of the reasons I'm here. I think Ukraine is a magnificent country. It really is. The scenery is incredible, and the people are really nice, very friendly, always willing to help. For someone who doesn't speak Ukrainian, people, they get out their phone and they're trying to translate. You know, everybody without exception has been helpful. It's incredible. You know, I mean, that's a positive, I think.
Okay, then I think that we will finish on the positive note in terms of Ukraine. It has a huge potential as a country with huge resources, and the main resource is human. They are humans, people, and that's maybe the main of the reason why foreign investments should come, businessmen and so on, and why your project, I hope so, will be popular.
Yeah, it will. I'll make it popular.
Okay.
I'll make it work. Now, the future is bright for Ukraine. It really is. It's just a pity at the moment that it's just in a transition from its old life into a democratic world. You know, it really is getting rid of the old Soviet Union and everything to do with it. Putin is still in his head that Ukraine is part of the Soviet Union, and you will never convince him otherwise. You know, no matter what argument, like, he will never understand that you're a separate culture and a separate people, and you deserve your own freedom.
No, like, I mean, we're talking so much about him. Like, I mean, it's like, you know, some kind of obsession that one guy is manipulating the whole world and not only him. And it's like a madness of the 21st century for everyone.
It's incredible. In 2025, we're heading to Mars, and there's a land war in Europe. It's absolutely unbelievable. It really is.
Yes, but unbelievable that the Europeans are letting him to do this. They do not stop him.
I can't. The European army, if they wanted to, they could stop it in the morning. The British and the Germans and the French could have 1 million troops in Ukraine in.
So they don't want.
They don't. Why don't they want to? I mean, I don't know, but logically I'm thinking they're afraid, because Putin is constantly, the reason why he says those threats is to keep everybody at bay. Like, he uses the N, as President Trump said, he uses the N-word, the nuclear word. He doesn't like that word being used because it is catastrophic, but Putin uses it to shut the Europeans up. Stop helping, or you'll all be in trouble.
Okay. Then the main blackmailing, I understand, nuclear weapon.
Absolutely.
Nuclear weapon.
Yeah. Well, that's my impression from what I am watching. You know, maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll say it as I figure it out when I'm reporting. But that's what it seems to me. Like, Europe wants to help, and Britain, they desperately want to help, but they have to be, like, today in Britain, there's a Russian vessel off the coast of Britain over cables. I just saw it on a newspaper this morning. Like, once Britain say they're going to do something or help the Ukraine, the Russians turn up around Britain. They fly over Britain, they're sailing around Britain, sailing around where the sea cables are. You know, and this is all like veiled threats. It's not like they're out having a sail around the ocean. They're there for a reason. We know where your cables are. Keep that nonsense up and there'll be no more cables. You know? It's very pervasive and bullying. You know, but you have to stand up to them at some point.
Intimidating.
That's what he. But look, he's KGB. He's done it all his life. He doesn't understand sitting down talking.
No, and I understand, believe me. I grew up in this mentality, I understand.
Yeah.
I think that still, because we ended like talking about Putin a lot, so I mean,
but he's his reach is pervasive in the European Union, and because of X, the platform, that they don't, I won't call it, like, what's the word when you monitor, like, it's so free, there's no, what's that, when you're, something with the media, you're controlling what people see, but
Big Brother.
no, what's it called in the media when they're, it'll come to me, but the fact that X is so free, that's been used against the West. Our freedom is used against us because we're not policing it properly. They're allowed to say whatever they want, and people are believing it, and it's changing people's minds, you know?
I think I understand. It's like some kind of influence when they said that he influenced on the results of the American elections, like they're influencing all the things in the whole world, so the computer, so the internet, cyber attacks, etc. Yeah, okay. I think that, you know, you have a lot to do.
I know I do. Learn Ukrainian, number one.
Number one is to stay alive. And number one is to do what you can do in the sphere you can help, because not everyone can do, I don't know, soldier's job or just to, especially to kill someone. We are not talking about that.
No, just reporting. I have children. I want to see them again. I want to see them again, so I'll stay a safe distance from any whatever battle, you know, so that's my plan.
I wish that your plan will be successful.
Well, hopefully. I mean, I'll try it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
We will see, and I think that the audience of Toloka Studio, please stay tuned. Stay tuned to Polemos, to Toloka Studio, to the following and next English language projects, including with James Lynch, who came to Ukraine, and we're gonna see how the project will develop. And I also hope to stay with Toloka more. So thank you for watching us. Stay with us.
Thank you. I've never done that before.